Hello, I'm Paul Race, and welcome to my workshop. Today it's in chaos because I'm restoring a number of Autoharps that I'm going to be demonstrating at a clinic this weekend in Columbus. I'm right now talking to you in April of 2024, so you may see this in 5 years, I don't know. But at any rate, I have a number of Autoharps of different ages, sizes, and shapes that I want to be showing people just to give them an idea of what is available, or what has been available, and maybe help them make choices if they decide to take the plunge and get their own Autoharp. The Autoharp I'm working on today specifically is this one. It's an OS73. Yes, it looks like it's ancient, but it's not. It's a reproduction that was originally designed for Catherine O'Hara to play in the movie A Mighty Wind. And people like the look of it so much that Oscar Schmidt began making them available to the general public. And as a member of the general public, I got this one on a auction because it had a little bit of dings on it. I got it cheap, and I decided that I wanted to do some reconfiguration to make it more folk-friendly. And by folk-friendly, what I mean is typical 21-chord Autoharps. This was a 21-chord Autoharp, and it will be again, but the typical 21-chord Autoharps have chords like A flat and B-flat-7 that you'll never actually use in folk music or bluegrass or country or anything of that nature. They were made originally they were designed to support polka bands. They were designed to play Tin Pan Alley music, which is piano oriented, but guitar oriented music tends to use a lot of sharp chords, chords in sharp keys like key of like A, E major, B7, B minor, F sharp minor. Some of those chords are not on any Autoharp except some of the very expensive ones that are made and some of the custom ones that are made. The three chords that I'm missing on this Autoharp as I buy it, or that you'll miss if you're a folk singer or a bluegrass player, are likely to be E major, B minor, and F sharp minor. Now, what I have done in order to get those onto my Autoharp is I took a number of steps. I ordered chord bar blanks. If you look at a 21-chord Autoharp, you'll see that there's a number of goofy things about it. One of which is that the chord buttons that have the name of the chord are not attached to the chord bars themselves. So if you decide to disassemble your Autoharp for any reason, the first thing you need to do is every time you remove a chord bar, you write the name of the chord bar right on the side of it. Somebody else actually did this because I'm not the first person that has tinkered with this one. So somebody got clever and said, I'm going to make sure when I put these back I don't mix them up. It is possible to mix them up because these buttons will slide around whether you're no matter how careful you are, they will slide around. Also, there are little springs on each of these posts. Usually they stay put when you pull the chord bars up, but they don't always. And one other thing to recognize is that the chord bars on the 21-chorders have a slot on one end and have a hole on the other end. And the hole goes onto this post, and the slot goes onto this post. If you accidentally turn them around, they will still go on your Autoharp, but you're not going to get the chords that you think you're going to get. So I just wanted to give you those three things. The other one, and probably the most important, is you never want to disassemble an Autoharp over shag carpet, because if these little springs disappear, they're hard to find. They're easy to replace, but it'll cost you some money. It costs more to ship, frankly, than they cost for the springs. And I try to avoid that if I possibly can. So what I wanted to show you today was how one could take a theoretically, if this is actually a chord bar I'm keeping. It's an E7 chord bar. I have it out because I was creating an E major chord and I needed room to work. As they come from the factory, the felts are like this, little pieces that have been glued on individually. When you start with a chord bar that looks like this, and you're going to cut your own chords, you don't need to cut them quite that way. What I did, and what most people do, is they make like little V's where the open strings need to be. So the key of E7 is like the key of E, like the E chord, except that it has a D alongside of it. So when I cut out the E chord, you'll see that most of my little divots line up with the little divots on the E7, but the E7 has a couple open places where I didn't cut it open, and that's where the D note is. There's a D note in the E7 chord that I don't need on my E major chord. So I will show you as an example. I will put this randomly back here because I have to resequence all these when I get caught up again. This is the E7 chord, and borrowing that that engineering just a little, and making sure I didn't cut out the D slots, I created an E major chord, which does not exist on the typical Oscar Schmidt 21 chord Autoharp. So that's the E chord. That's the E7 chord. See the E chord? It's just the same chord, but without the D. So that's one of the chords that I cut to put on this. And I had a whole lot. I actually put together a long explanation of how I was doing this. I did not, let's just say, there were so many goofy little things that went wrong that I thought it would be more confusing to present this than to just start over and show one important part of this function, and that is how to mark and how to score these chord bars. I've got the new E chord, and I was experimenting with marking it for a. I've got a little extra felt on there. These when you order them blank, they just got the felt all the way along, and that's a good thing because you really don't want to be messing around with those little individual pieces if you can help it. Frankly, it's a pain. This is one that I've already marked with the idea that it would be the F sharp chord bar. You see I have oops, sorry. I have it marked where I will need to be cutting the slots. Ironically, it's a little bit off. I may have to redo that one. I'll show you with this one, which is going to be B minor. Funny thing, they have these little, see the little, the handy little note name, and looks like a little piano keyboard on the bottom of this harp. That doesn't actually line up with the strings. So what I had to do was I had to go back and pick the strings out individually. Now I have a chart that I'm working on that when I'm done, I'm going to show where to cut the slots for these three chords. It's not as convoluted as you might think. If you know music theory at all, you know that if you have a B minor chord, that you got B, D, and F sharp are in the B minor chord. So I try to find the lowest B, the lowest F sharp, and the lowest D on this and mark it with my handy dandy Sharpie. So let's see. In a way, how do I find a B? Well, there's a B in the E minor chord. Okay, so that's the first B that appears on the Autoharp. So I'm going to mark it right there. That's a B. And now I want to mark a D, so I'm going to actually play a D chord. So that's a D note. And now that I know there's an F sharp in my B minor chord, so I'm going to keep going up until I find. I'm still playing a D chord here. I'm going to keep going up until I find the F sharp, and that's F sharp right there. That's the F sharp chord. Okay, now the next note up I'm likely to find is going to be a B again. So I'm going to go back to my E minor, which I know has a B chord, B note in it. That's my B. I'm actually going to look at the string up here and make sure I'm getting the right one. Yeah, that's my B. So I'm going to mark that again. And I'm going to keep going up again. The next one I need is an F sharp. So I'm going to keep going until I find the F sharp. I'm sorry, the D. There's my D. Now, if I was to try to hold the camera over here so you could see this, you would see that the marks I'm making do not align with the note names on this. It is off center by about 1/4 of an inch. And I discovered that the hard way because I marked one of these up. And fortunately, before I cut it, I double checked it, and it was like seriously off. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to need is an F sharp. So if I hit a D major, I will find F sharp here. Again, I'll try to put together a chart that shows this, but in case you wondered if it's magic, the answer is no. It's just kind of a pain when you have an Autoharp that the note names do not align where they should. That should be, I think I did that wrong. I did an A. I'm going to have a B7 chord here if I'm not careful. Okay, so I had the F sharp. See what I did? I did the A. That doesn't count. I'm going to X that. And then I'm going to keep going up because I want that B. I'm going to hit the E minor chord again. That's my B. Second from the highest string is always a B on these. So I've got my marks for a B, a D, an F sharp, a B, a D, and an F sharp, and a B. So that'll be my B minor when I'm all through with it. Now let's just say, for the fun of it, I want an F sharp minor chord. Now I actually marked this one. One of the things, again, notice the slot goes on this end. So I think as I mark this, I may have marked it a little bit off. So this is supposed to be F sharp minor. So I'm going to double check and make sure that it is. I'm going to hit the lowest note on an F sharp minor chord that is available on this device is going to be the F sharp note. So if I'm in the key of D, right there. Oh, that's a good mark. Okay, so the next one up from the F sharp should be A. Okay, that's a good mark. Do you see that? A. Okay, the next one will be C sharp. In order to get to a C sharp, I need to play an E major chord. There's my C sharp. That mark is good. It's funny, it looks like they're off, but it is good. Now, the next thing I'm going to hit is going to be another F sharp, so I'm going to go up back to the D chord. I've got an F sharp right there. See my mark? Okay, next note should be A, which is in a D chord. And look, I've got a mark for my A right there. Okay, the next note will be, let's see, C sharp, so I've got to go back to my A major chord. Okay, I've got a C sharp right there. Okay, since I don't have a 7th, the next note up is going to be F sharp. So I'm going to go back to my D chord here. That's my F sharp. And then I'm going to go, I stay with that because it's got a, next thing is going to be an A. And that's as high as it gets. This mark, set of markings will create my F sharp minor chord bar. I'm going to write it down. F sharp minor. See that? F sharp minor. So now I also went to Elderly, which is a music store in Michigan, and These are the old, this E7 is actually what I will use. This is what they look like that came on the harp, but I ordered some new buttons for the chords that I haven't, that I'm making, and this is going to be the E major. So as I go down here, the E7 actually, let's see, do I have the E7 chord in there? No, that's the E major chord. So where do I stick the E7 chord? Here's the E7 chord. There's a certain series that the chords have to go in order to maintain their appropriate positions. And it so happens that in my just fooling around here, I put the E7 chord bar where another chord ought to be. And that's okay. So let's see. I think it will go here. You get the hang of this eventually. My E7 is sitting in the wrong place because I was messing around with it. Okay, so I put the E7 here where it's going to belong. Okay. So I got my E7 back where it belongs. The chord I'm missing in here is actually going to be one of the ones I'm making over here. So let's see, what am I going to start with? I will start with the B minor. Now it so happens I started to say I ordered buttons for these chords. Turns out the buttons are really pretty white color because they're ordinarily made to go on a standard 21 quarter where the buttons are white. On this device, the buttons are brown. They look tea stained. For a while at least, until I get around to staining the new buttons, I'm going to have a unusual looking configuration there. So let's see. This is going to eventually be B minor is going to go in here. I'm pulling out the B flat 7, which I don't think I'll ever be using. I also have a B7 chord that is going to go in here too. It was already here. It's just it's going to get moved over. So the chord bars I need, I'm replacing. I've got the E major. So let's see, A major. That should go here. So my E major chord bar is going to go here. Let me find a button for it. Here we go, E major. So let's see. Okay. Yep, right where it belongs. So that leaves me 2 more chord bars to cut, maybe 3, depending on how far I want to go with this. The B7, it's a legitimate chord bar that came with the device. I'm just moving it to another position. Here's my B7 button. I'll put that on here. I'll show you the when I'm all done, I'll show you how these buttons are laid out. It's what they call the Brian Bowers layout. So I got a A7, B7, B7. Okay, then at this point I'm only missing 2 chords, and they are B minor and F sharp minor, and they will go there and there. So let's start with the F sharp minor, just for the fun of it. So you see how I have this marked. Once again, I don't need to make these little crazy things. This happens to be the A flat, which came off of this end of the Autoharp. Guess what? I play all kinds of instruments, and I almost never play A flat, so I won't miss it at all. But again, when they come, they look like this. When you cut them, all you have to do is notch them. So I'm going to get my little utility knife here. See that little line there? I don't need to cut on the line. I need to cut a notch to it, going down both ways. There we go. So when I put this on the harp, that's going to happen to be a B note. Tell you what, I'll take this B7 off just to get it out of the way for now. That should be a B note. So I'm not saying I test it every time, but there's my B. Okay, the next note down on this chord would likely be a G7. Again, you see me notching it? Boy, a new blade really makes a difference. I have, you can't really, I don't know if you can see on my table, but I have little gobs of felt from where I've been doing this with other chord bars. So now I should have B and G7 notes. Let's see if I do. Let's see here. No, I'm sorry, this is F sharp minor. I should have, am I looking at the right one? Okay, F sharp minor. I should have A. Doesn't sound like A, does it? Did I put it on backwards? Nope. Oh. So I've got it over A, and I've got it over F sharp. So what's not happening that should? Okay, I've got them there. Okay, the next one I cut is going to be a C sharp. Sorry, it can get a little confusing when you're doing this for a number of chord bars at the same time. That's on me. See, I've got another notch where the C sharp shall be. The next C sharp will be. Is that a C sharp? I know why it's not sounding, because I laid a chord bar there. Yep, that's my C sharp. Starting to sound like a minor chord, isn't it? Okay. Here comes the next notch, which will be an A. I don't know if that's deep enough. Let's see if it'll make a sound. Hear the A? Harp was going to go out of tune, just a little humidity's through the roof. Okay, next notch is going to be an F sharp. Hear my F sharp there? Working on an F sharp chord. All right, F sharp minor chord. Okay, next notch is going to be another C sharp. Now what happens if you cut the notch the wrong place? You grab one of these little V's and glue it back in. I cut the notch too wide on one of the other chord bars that I've already cut. And yeah, it's embarrassing, but it happens. Let's see. Yeah. The C sharp. Look at that. I cut him a little wide. So I will have to go back and glue in a tiny bit of felt, which can be done. Actually, the easiest way to do it is to make a square. I've already done this once, so now you get to see me do it again. I make a square. It needs to be a little bigger than that. And I take a little square piece off of one of the other chord bars I'm not going to be using. Yeah, see this little guy here? This little square? I don't need him because I'm taking this chord bar. I'm not going to use this chord bar again. Probably somebody's going to inherit this harp 40 years from now. And they're going to be, why are these extra chord bars in here, and why are they missing felts? And the answer is because I got too carried away with my cuts. So I'm going to cut the next 3 pieces here, 2 pieces, and then I'll be done, except for going back and gluing in a repair. So this will be my F sharp chord bar once I've repaired it. F sharp minor. That's the C I need to fix. There's my F sharp minor chord. You can tell the harp's going a little bit out of tune. Here's my little square I'm going to glue in. So let's see, I need to give it a little more room. So I'll notch this out. Well, I'm using utility glue. I'm sure there's a perfect solution that I'm not using that I should be. By the way, this square is from an older Autoharp, from a true Model 73. Do you see how much deeper the felt is? I actually had thought I would be able to fix this by using a felt from a retired unit. But no, I have to use the same exact size felt as what we have here. So let me see what I've got. By the way, you can order felt pieces like this. You can order strips. You can order it in a big roll. I have a big roll of felt that's for another class of Autoharps that I bought a long time ago. So if I like really screwed this up, I wouldn't have any trouble fixing it with these other pieces. Let's see, went the wrong way. Let me see if this lines up then. Once again, the hole goes on this end. The slot goes on this end. The C that should not be sounding and is. Am I doing this right? Is there. And that's where I need to get that little piece of stuff glued on. Okay. These chord bars are extruded aluminum, extremely cheap for people to manufacture, and some people have made a cottage industry out of them. Let's see then. Okay, that B is no longer sound, or that C is no longer sounding. There aren't any notes down there it uses. Okay, that's my F sharp minor. And in order to keep my sequence of chords where I want them to be, it actually has to go over here. So I drop it in there. Make sure it still sounds good. Well, it's hard to hit without the button. Okay, still sounds good to me. So let me put my E7 marker back here where it belongs. Let me put my E major marker back here where it belongs. And now I'm going to put my F sharp minor button where it belongs. That's an F sharp minor. Okay, I have one more chord to go, and that is going to be the B minor. So that's the one that you saw me draw the marks for just a little while ago. Where is it? Remember, we have a B7 that's going to go on here on the end. But I'm leaving that open while I test and cut my B minor chord. So once again, the slot goes on here. And the hole goes up here. I'm going to check again. The B minor will be should be these chords. Notes, I mean. Oh, that's right. I've got that A in there by accident. So let's see. I have an F, should have. That's my B minor, but I noticed down here I didn't hit that F sharp. I didn't get the F sharp. So there's an F sharp down here. I'm going to find it by hitting a D chord. Got my F sharp. Just being anal retentive. I've made enough mistakes here that I don't want to keep making them if I can avoid it. So there's an F sharp there that I can use in my B minor chord. It may or may not. Some Autoharp setups, they don't use, like for instance, if you have the key of C, they will not use the low G in the key and the C chord. Let me see if this one does. No, it doesn't. F, G. See, the C chord sounds fine, but it doesn't use that low G. So it's like, to me, that's ironic that they do that. I like to have just as full a sound as I possibly can. So I am going to put that low F sharp in my B. Okay, and now you see I have marked them and tested. Test again. F sharp. B, D, F sharp, B, D, F sharp, B. Oops, A doesn't count. Watch me cut that A out just because I'm not paying attention. Okay. Once again, high B will be first. And so I don't forget and cut that A out that I accidentally marked. The next thing I'm going to cut out is I'm going to skip that deliberately and cut out the next note there in the chord. Let's see what we have. So I should have two notes sounding. Hear those? I got the start of a chord. Looks like I have an insect attack here of some kind, doesn't it? Okay. Notching the next couple down. You see, once you've done this a while, it's not so bad. Oops. That doesn't really have a rich sound, does it? Yeah. It's there. Wonder if I'm stifling it a little. Maybe I didn't cut it deep enough or wide enough. Yeah. I'd like to say it's an exact science. You could, at one time, order chord bars for these chords that were already cut out. But what they discovered, the same quality control that went into this piece of paper showing where the notes ought to be happens all the time. And they discovered that the distances between strings from one year to the next on these instruments changes. So the companies that used to sell, Elderly was one of them, that used to sell pre-configured chord bars for these chords, there it is, gave up because they were just getting too many returns. I wanted that mark looked funny. I want to make sure I have it right. Okay, so the next mark down is that one. Okay. Because they would get their pre-configured chord bars, and they would go to all this work of taking their Autoharps apart and losing springs and everything else. So once they got them installed, they didn't actually work after all. So That's why you can't buy pre-configured chord bars for these things anymore. I mean, it would make sense. You would think it'd be available. Let me see if that sounds okay. You can see one where I cut the slot too big and I got an extra note, and that was a minute ago. There's an example where I cut the slot too narrow and didn't get the note I wanted. Okay, good so far. See, if I don't make any major mistakes on this one, I should just cut everything else out and use this one. That's what the experts do, you know. They want you to think that they never make mistakes. Not only do I make mistakes, but I show them to you. And you know what? There's a whole lot of people out there, frankly, thousands, who've read my newsletters and things over the years, who look at my mistakes and go, well, if that idiot can do it, then surely I can. And then they go ahead and they do it, and they do a better job the first time than I ever did. And you know what? That makes me proud, because I've influenced them to get out of their comfort zone. That shouldn't be sounding. On these, look at this. The lowest part of this should be covering the F, and it's not. It doesn't come all the way down. So let's find a piece of felt I can use to do that. To do that. I'm going to take this fat piece from the old Autoharp and cut it down and use it there. Precision isn't necessarily required at this particular juncture. So I should sue whoever sent me this with the little bit of felt, just a quarter of an inch short of what it ought to be. But you know what? The person that made these custom made them and did me a favor, so I'm not going to lay awake nights feeling like I got ripped off. Again, you can buy these bars from a number of sources. Elderly in Michigan. Autoharp Works used to sell them. I don't know if they still do. Probably could talk to Pete Daigle and Daigle Autoharps, and he could probably help you find a source if he doesn't have any in stock. Pete's a really good guy. He's been helpful on a number of occasions, even though I've only ever bought one harp from him. Because he makes wonderful, wonderful custom harps, but I like to tinker, as you can tell. So I get okay, this harp, when it was new, probably was $400, and I got it for about $150 because it had a lot of cosmetic damage. And I've got I'll have about another, because these, the cost of these and the cost of the replacement buttons, I'll have about another $35 into it, probably by the time I finish. Now I got these bars, chord bars, cheap. So that doesn't look right. Really looks like that's going to be too far over. Let's see. Let's see. Will this go all the way down? Well, there's my B minor chord. All right. Now, the B minor is going to go between the E minor and the F sharp minor. So it has to go a certain place. I'm going to wipe the extra glue off and make sure that I'm not creating a mess. But I've so far, when I've put something in here with the glue still on it, nobody died. So here's my B minor button. Once again, it's a little bit brighter colored than the ones that are on the harp. But there's a D chord, there's a B minor chord, there's an A chord, here's an F sharp chord, here's an E chord, an E7 chord, there's an E chord, Now what am I missing? I'm missing the B7 chord that I laid aside because it was in my way. Again, the B7 chord, you can tell by the square that it was, by the square cutouts, that it came with the harp. I just moved it to another part where it made more sense harmonically with the relationship of the other chords. So where's the button for the B7? It's laying here. Again, it's one of the old tea-stained looking ones. And when I'm all done, I have B7. This arrangement is based on Brian Bauer's arrangement, where it puts as much in the circle of fifths as it possibly can. So the middle bar here is B flat, F, C, G, D, A, E. That's circle of fifths. And then I have the relative minors down under here: G minor, D minor, A minor, E minor, B minor, F sharp minor. And on the tops, I have the sevenths that are useful. There's a F7, so C7, G7, D7, A7, E7. Now, because of the way these are arranged, there was no way to put the B7 out on this end, so it went down here. So if I'm playing in the key of E, which I can now because I couldn't before, I have the E major and I have the B7 right there, and I have the A major right there. So I'm all set. Boil that cabbage down, boys, swing them whole kicks round. The only song I ever did sing was Boil That Cabbage Down. The other chord bar that I glued, I think I glued a repair on most of these as I was cutting them, but they don't seem to be sticking to their neighbors. So if I really wanted to take a chance, I put this baby back over it. Okay, how is it going to go? It's going to go backwards. Now once again, these little buttons slide every which way, and when you even if you don't mess around, I didn't mess around today and yesterday, I didn't mess around with anything on this end, but the buttons have still slid around. So when you go to put this back on, you got to kind of do some nudging to get them back into place where they belong. So nudge, nudge, nudge. Okay, nudge, 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 nudge. Come on, you can do it. Okay, that E is definitely out of spot, out of place. So let's get the E back where it belongs, up here. Get the D up here. Get the G up here. Get some nudging. Okay, G up here. A has got off to the side, or A7 went off to the side. A has gone south a little. Okay, I'm getting close. B7. The F sharp 7 needs to come up a little. F sharp minor, I mean, needs to come up a little. B minor needs to come up a little. E minor needs to, now so you didn't see me really do anything with the E minor except push it when I was trying to make sure I had a B note sounding. And yet that was all it took for it to slide out of alignment. Okay, the C7's out of alignment here, and I don't see why, but I'll try to slide it back up into place. Okay, more or less in place. Come on, you can do it. There we go. Okay, E minor is still out of whack. Okay, B minor needs to come over a little and up a little. Everything is pretty much where it needs to be except for this poor B minor. So let me nudge him up where he needs to be. There we go. Oh, and now they go. Okay, so once again, I'll test this all out before I screw it back together. But you can see the note arrangement now. You can see the B flat 7, F, C, G, D, A, E. That's my circle of fifths. The sevenths are above. The relative minors are below. Makes it real easy, because if you're going to play a song in D, well, guess what? G and A7 are in the same place. And then if somebody says, let's play that song in C instead. Okay, well, you got C, F, and G7. are in the same relative positions. So it makes a big difference when you're playing in a lot of keys, which is I mean, people buy these because the idea is they want to be able to play them in a mess of keys. I'm kind of juggling this because I want to make sure all these are doing what they need to do. People want to play a mess of keys, but then you get them when it turns out they can't play in all the keys you want. Sound like all the buttons are working? Yes, to me it sounds like all the buttons are working. They still feel a little uneven. Maybe the springs just aren't. Maybe some of the springs are just stronger than others. But I think what I've got here is something that's close enough to justify screwing it back together. And one reason I'm anxious to get this back together and off my workbench is that I have about 6 other projects to do before the clinics next weekend. So screwing it back together is just a case of screwing it back together. I will cut my, I'll put one other screw in on the other side, and then I will cut this project off until till I have anything else to report on it. This may be the last you see of this Autoharp for a while, although as you can tell, I'm going to have some fun with it. When I go to historical reenactments, I usually try to take instruments that really did come from the 1840s or the 1920s or whenever it is I'm working. This is an example of the type of Autoharp that the OS73C is based on. This is a 15-quarter. These started out as 12 quarters. Mother Maybelle Carter started playing one of these when it was a 12-quarter. They gradually they went up to 15 quarters, 15 chords before they redesigned the shape of these. But to go back to a 15-quarter, when you show up for something, you have no idea what keys people are going to be playing songs in, but you know they're going to be using guitars. I'd rather have an instrument that has these extra chords. Once again, you can certainly see what they are because of the color difference, but I don't think anybody's going to take me to task for that. And in the meantime, I hope that you have enjoyed this presentation. Hopefully you got a little something out of it, and maybe courage to attack your own instrument, or maybe you've got an instrument that's already a basket case, and this gives you a little confidence to go in and try something different with it. I started out working on basket cases. One reason I'm not afraid to cut into a good instrument once in a while. But I hope that whatever you get out of this, that you have a lovely day, and that you're able to make music, and that you're able to make music with your friends and family in the days to come. Have a great day. Bye.